Hello and welcome to MRCPsych on the Go Revision Essentials. My name is Dr. Albert Bandura and I'm a psychiatry trainee in the west of Scotland. Like many of you, I spent a lot of time commuting. This was valuable time that I could have spent revising for the MRCPsych examination. And so, I've started this podcast to help you revise on the go. Each episode breaks down one high-yield topic mapped to the syllabus. This is then followed by 5 questions to help reinforce your learning. So, grab your headphones, turn travel time into revision time, and let's get started. So far, we have focused mainly on reinforcement and behavioural acquisition. In this episode, we turn to 2 related concepts. First, punishment. Second, observational learning. Punishment explains how behaviour decreases. Observational learning explains how behaviour can be acquired without direct reinforcement. Both are highly testable concepts. Let's start with the psychology of punishment. Punishment decreases behaviour. There are 2 forms. Positive punishment adds an unpleasant stimulus. Negative punishment removes a desirable stimulus. Here is a clinical example of positive punishment. A patient repeatedly smokes on hospital grounds despite clear rules. They receive an immediate financial fine from the hospital trust. In doing so, an unpleasant consequence is added. The primary aim is to reduce the behaviour. Now, let's see an example of negative punishment. A child behaves aggressively toward a sibling. The parent removes access to their toy for the evening. In doing so, a desirable stimulus is taken away, and the aim is to reduce the behaviour. Hence, punishment can suppress behaviour. However, it has limitations. It may only work in the short term, it does not teach an alternative behaviour, and it may produce fear or avoidance. Punishment is also most effective when it is immediate, consistent, and proportionate. Remember, positive punishment adds something unpleasant. Negative punishment removes something desirable. Punishment decreases behaviour, but doesn't teach a replacement behaviour. Now, let's look at observational learning. Observational learning refers to learning by watching others. It does not require direct reinforcement. This concept comes from social learning theory first proposed by Albert Bandura. Bandura is best known for the Bobo doll experiments in the 1960s. In these studies, children watched an adult act aggressively toward an inflatable doll. When later given the chance to play with the same doll, many children imitated the aggressive behaviour. This challenged the dominant behaviourist view at the time, which mainly focused on direct reinforcement and punishment. Bandura showed that learning could occur purely through observation. He argued that behaviour is learned through interaction between the individual, their environment, and their cognitive processes. Observational learning involves 4 key processes: attention, retention, reproduction, motivation. The learner must attend to the model. They must retain what they observed in memory. They must have the ability to reproduce the behaviour. They must be motivated to perform it. This motivation is strongly influenced by reinforcement. If the model is rewarded, imitation becomes more likely. This is known as vicarious reinforcement. Vicarious reinforcement occurs when observing another person being rewarded increases the likelihood that the observer will imitate that behaviour. If the model is punished, imitation becomes less likely. Remember, Social learning theory proposes that behaviour can be acquired through observation without direct reinforcement. Attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation are required for observational learning. Let's see how these concepts are clinically relevant. Punishment may reduce unwanted behaviour. However, it does not build new skills. Observational learning helps explain modelling in therapy. In modelling, the therapist demonstrates a behaviour which the patient observes and learns to imitate. It also explains parenting interventions and explains behaviour spreading within peer groups. Both concepts appear in behavioural science questions. As always, we will now move on to 5 exam-style questions. After each one, I will pause for 10 seconds so you can think through the answer before hearing the explanation. Question 1. A patient repeatedly shouts at staff during ward rounds. Each time this happens, they are given an additional written warning and are temporarily restricted from group activities. What behavioural principle does this illustrate? The answer is positive punishment. Question 2. A child repeatedly refuses to complete homework. In response, the parent removes access to the child's video games for the evening. What behavioural principle does this illustrate? The answer is negative punishment. Question 3. Why does punishment often fail to produce long-term behavioural change? Because it suppresses behaviour but does not teach an alternative response. Question 4. What 4 conditions are required for effective observational learning? The answer is attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. And finally, question 5. In group therapy, a patient observes another patient being praised for assertive communication. They later imitate that behaviour. What process explains this? The answer is observational learning through vicarious reinforcement. If you paused and thought it through, that is exactly how to prepare for this exam. Well done. Let's summarise what we have learnt today. Reinforcement increases behaviour, either by adding a desirable stimulus or by removing an unpleasant one. Punishment decreases behaviour. This is done similarly to reinforcement, through either adding an unpleasant stimulus or removing a desirable one. Its effects may be limited, and it does not teach replacement behaviour. Observational learning allows behaviour to be acquired by watching others. It requires attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. Behaviour is more likely to be imitated when the observed model is rewarded, a process known as vicarious reinforcement. If you can clearly distinguish punishment from reinforcement and remember the 4 components of observational learning, you will be well prepared for exam questions on this topic. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of MRCPsych on the Go Revision Essentials. I hope this episode helped to move your revision forward. If you have any questions or just want to continue the discussion, you can find me on LinkedIn at MRCPsych on the go, spelled MRCPysch on the go. This podcast is about making revision accessible. If you found it useful, liking and sharing it with others helps the goal more than anything else. That's it for today. I'm Dr. Albert Bandura, and as always, keep revising on the go.